Jointer. This is what I bought at Home Depot.
Two drawers, and we want them both the exact same size. So I like to.
Daddy!
What happened? What happened, Eden? What's going on?
I dropped my phone again.
Again? Sorry, buddy.
Please, Daddy, please, just make me those nightstands.
I got you. I'm gonna get right on it. I'll make your nightstands. I'll start. I promise.
This has been by far the hardest video for me to complete, and it's not because the nightstands are hard. Rather, it's the topic that I want to discuss and hopefully get your perspective on as well. No, the screen didn't crack, but he's been asking for a pair of nightstands for now at least 2 years, and it's due time I deliver. The species of wood that you see me milling is alder, which I got free from a friend's warehouse. What happens next was so dangerous. As I was ripping this block of hard alder, the board pinched the blade. And let Raheem in the moment try to explain.
Board had a lot of internal stress, and it was starting to pinch the blade. Now the riving knife helps and ensures that you don't pinch the blade, thus resulting in a kickback. Very dangerous scenario. But to be more safe, the best thing to do is to take a wedge like this and put it into the piece of wood and let it and force it to separate so that there's no way for it to pinch the blade as you're running it through the table saw.
Boy, that was close. Disaster averted, the one time I'll be thankful for having a underpowered table saw. But before we dive into the build, I want to take a step back and talk about something that's really close to my heart. Fatherhood. Specifically, what's the right age to have kids? It might be a little late for me to think about this now. But is it better to start young and dive into the chaos early? Or wait till you're a little bit older, more mature, and stable? I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and especially as I build this project. I want to share a personal story with you. My dad, rest his soul, passed away now nearly a decade ago. Had me when he was a bit older. Well, older than most of my friends' dads, at least. And because of that, at least I think, there were moments as I got older, I could tell he was struggling to keep up with my energy. You know, when you're in your teens, running around, chasing trouble, getting into all kinds of shenanigans. He just wasn't quite as sharp and as fast as I was. He had the wisdom, of course, but sometimes that energy gap was tough. The last part of the milling process was to use the thickness planer and get all the boards to the same width. Here's a tip for you. Add a longer board to your planer sled to ensure you don't get snipe. I use MDF since it's manufactured completely flat and it's such a stable material. Not many people know about alder, which is a fantastic wood to work with. It's sturdy, looks great, and takes stain really well. And just like in life, picking the right materials for a project is key. Sometimes the right choices take time to figure out. Don't get me wrong, my father was a wonderful man. He taught me so much in life. How to work hard, how to handle money, how to be responsible. He was always the voice of reason and a pillar in my home. I mean, I turned out okay, right? And I have my parents to thank for that. He was always there for me, and I owe more than I can ever repay. Speaking of pay, the boards are finally milled and it's time to pull out the poor man's domino joiner, my biscuit jointer. This tool doesn't get enough love in the YouTube world, but once I played Tetris and finally decided the grain orientation, I used the biscuit jointer, which is not used for strength. Rather, it does a great job to ensure the boards stay aligned during pull up. Back to what I was saying about my father. He showed us how to be a good father. But one thing I always noticed as I got older was that he didn't have the same energy I did. Speaking of looking up to people, I've always wanted to do this.
Hip thrust, hip thrust, hip thrust.
Thank you, Jason, for inventing the hip thrust and bringing a little joy to the woodworking community. Alright, back to the build. It's finally time for that stressful glue up, but because I used biscuits, alignment was simple. I just took my time and ensured the boards were aligned correctly. This build took months to complete, but honestly, I kept thinking more about the fatherhood topic than the build itself. You see, taking time to mill the boards correctly and not rushing is kinda like early fatherhood. Having kids early to solve one problem, but am I mature enough? I don't think anyone has all the answers, and I'm sure my son will be a great man. But I always wonder, Am I mature enough to set the right example for my kids, like my father did for us? Now then, after cross-cutting the access off the boards, it's time to replicate Jason's nightstand design by using miter joints. First, we will remove the zero clearance insert plate so that the table saw blade has space to lean to 45 degrees. The miters can be tricky, but when done correctly, they really make the piece shine. Kinda like how I think of parenting. It's all about getting the right fit, the right timing, and putting the effort to make sure everything comes out as expected. Now, to ensure I got the right angle, I started with the digital angle finder. Then, used a square to confirm. Then another square to double confirm. And then finally back to the digital angle finder to triple confirm. This can make or break the miter joint, and I've put a lot of effort in milling this wood and don't want to mess it up now. After cutting all the miters, it was time to do a test fit. And historically, I've always used cheaper clamping squares, but Find Buy Tools reached out and encouraged me to try some other products and sent over these aluminum clamping squares. What a difference. Just look how much longer it's taking me to use my older clamps, and rest assured, they're absolutely square. If you've never tried these, you definitely should, and they're a heck of a lot cheaper than the other red colored brand. If you're interested, there's a link in the video description below. And to be clear, I do not get paid if you purchase from their website. I'm just sharing this because I think it's worth passing along to fellow woodworkers. Next, we want to bring some additional shape to the boring box with a back bevel, similar to what Jason did. Back to the parenting discussion. As I was growing up, causing my share of chaos, I remember thinking, when I have kids, I want to be young enough to keep with them and actually catch them in shenanigans I know they're going to pull. As you watch, as I mark and add biscuits to the miter joints for a little strength and help with alignment during the upcoming glue up. My son might watch this video, so I won't tell you the details of the shenanigans I got into, but let's just say my mother to date states she didn't have a third child because of me. And I think I helped control the world's population and, more importantly, remain the baby of my family. Here's some shenanigans in the shop. Here's me trying to run a biscuit jointer without it being plugged in. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, but having kids when you're young has its benefits. You get to be in the trenches with them, experience all those moments together, the first steps, first words, and yes, even the shenanigans. You're more likely to be physically active and you can relate to their energy. But there's a flip side. You might not be as financially stable or emotionally ready to handle the pressure that comes with parenthood. Also, congratulations! You've made it to past 8 minutes into the video. First and foremost, thank you. And if you're enjoying this video, please consider clicking the like button. And if you like this type of content, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out our future content. It is much appreciated and will really go a long way to help the small woodworking channel out. I have to say, when you're trying to glue up miter joints like this, adjustable band claps are the real superstar to ensure the glue up has even pressure from all sides. The next morning was like Christmas for me. I couldn't wait to take the box out of the clamps and try out this new iPhone 16 trick I learned on speeding up your glue ups. What do you know? It actually worked. Okay, with both the cabinets assembled, it's time to build the drawers. Now there are many ways to build drawers, but the easiest in my opinion is with pocket screws and a floating base. Let me show you how. Before we do that, we need to ensure we have a nice clean blade so that we don't have any tear out. Fortunately, Find Buy Tool also sent over their new 60-tooth blade, which is perfect for plywood. I mean, honestly, it's the same price as the brand you get at the big box stores, but has larger carbide teeth, so that it's going to last a lot longer. Just wait till you see that cut quality. With the new blade installed, we can reinstall the zero clearance insert and ensure the blade is back at 90 degrees. And instead of grabbing the measurements from the plan, I measured the assembled cabinets and started cutting the plywood. The width of this cut will be the height of the individual drawers. Just look at the quality of that cut. Zero tear out on the top and on the bottom. This blade definitely has my vote, and if you want to give it a try, there are links below in the video description. And remember, as I mentioned before, this is not an affiliate link, therefore I do not get paid to say this. It's actually a good quality blade. Now, to ensure we get a perfect fitting drawer, I take the total width of the cabinet and subtract the width of the drawer slides and the hardware. Oh, and did I mention 1/2-inch plywood is perfect to build drawers with? So, did you get some thought about what the right age is to have kids? I encourage you to leave a comment below with your thoughts, but in my opinion, there's no perfect answer. It's all about balance. Having kids when you're young means you get to play with them more, share more physical activities, and maybe relate to their teenage years better. But as I saw with my dad, age brings wisdom, knowledge, and indispensable life experiences. And that's something I want to pass down to my kids too. I want to be the dad who not only can keep up with them, but also guide them with the lessons I've learned. Back to the drawers. Once you have the pieces cut to the right dimension, you will need to build a little dado groove. Don't worry, you don't need a dado stack for this. Your normal table saw blade will work just fine. I usually cut 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the drawer, and the dado itself is 1/4 inch deep. Now you'll need to run the pieces twice, slightly moving the table saw fence so the width of the dado ends up being 1/8 of an inch, which will fit perfectly for the plywood that we're going to use for the base. We're going to start the assembly now, and if what I said didn't make sense yet, don't worry. You will see what I mean as we assemble the drawer. Now, as you watch me set up my pocket screw jig, I have one more confession. There's actually another reason why it's taken me so long to build these nightstands. I want to surprise my son, and I have to wait for him to be either at school or in bed so that he doesn't catch me working on them. You see, my shop is not in the garage. It's in a small room in my basement of my house. It's not perfect, but it's my personal getaway from the daily grind. But if I work while my kids are at home, or when they're awake, they can easily see what I'm building and ruin my surprise. Okay, let's pause the video here for a second and let me explain this drawer in a bit more detail. These two arrows are identifying the sides of the drawer. We know this because we usually put pocket screws in from the front and the back panels into the sides, which provides more strength as well as keeps the sides looking clean. Lastly, we also know this is the back of the drawer because the other three sides are slightly higher by 1/2 inch. And this, alongside the dado I discussed earlier, is used to hold the drawer bottom. Okay, let's continue. I'll show you that next. After grabbing the measurements directly from the drawer, ensuring we include the additional length required to fill the dados, we'll rip and cross-cut a 1/8 inch plywood piece for the drawer base. Perfect fit. Now just add a couple of small screws or brad nails to secure the drawer bottom and we can call these drawers complete. Now for the drawer fronts. We'll go through the same milling process, but since these fronts are going to be only 1/4 inch thick, we're just going to skip the biscuits. Rather, just spend a little extra time to ensure the boards are jointed and planed correctly so that we don't have a stressful glue up. Wait, is there such a thing as a non-stressful glue up? I think I used every brand of clamps that I have in my shop for this glue up. Speaking of stressful experiences, have you ever tried to play Fortnite? It's a third-person shooter survival game where the player has to survive against 100 other players. Now, I considered myself a gamer in my day, but when my son asked me to play with him, I was quickly reminded that I come from a generation of 2 action buttons and 3D worlds, whereas this is upwards of 12 action buttons, and the speed at which these players play is nothing short of remarkable. It's like a seasoned lumberjack trying to build a treehouse with a hammer, when his son already has all the latest power tools. These players, including my son, obviously have much faster reflexes and the utmost unnatural ability to adapt, while I felt like I was working with a rusted saw trying to cut through a forest. Nonetheless, with a little practice I found my groove, and believe it or not, I was able to help my son win a few crowns. And when it comes to raising kids, it's the same idea. You might not always be able to keep up with their pace of the younger generation, but your experiences will help you create a foundation that stands the test of time. Finally, we needed to cut and install our French cleats, which you can see needed a bit of convincing. With this complete, I realized the miter corners looked pretty sharp and decided to add a 1/4 inch roundover, and Find Buy Tools also sent over a roundover set. Let me tell you, these are not your regular roundover bits. Rather, these are industrial grade quality with carbide tips, and they are sharp. I chucked up the 1/4 inch shank on my handheld router, and it gave me a smooth, clean cut with no chips or burrs. The bearings are also good quality as well. If you're in the market for a good, reliable set, check the video description below for the link. They have all kinds of router bits on their website, and the prices are fairly reasonable. Remember, I don't get a cut for saying this, I just think it's good quality. Sanding a woodworking project is like a final exam. It's where all your hard work meets its fate. And you know it's going to take you longer than you'd like, but it has to get done. Why do we hate sanding? Maybe that's a topic for another video, but I personally think a wise woodworker put it the best. It's the part of the job where you're literally rubbing it in. Except the one thing getting rubbed is your patience. Finally, at the home stretch of this project. Speaking of rubbing it in, let's talk about this finish. Oddie's oil. I love this finish. It's the best definition of a little goes a long way, and elbow grease and endurance is the key to success. I mentioned in the beginning that alder takes stain really well, and here's the proof. Just look at that grain pop. This is the best part of building a project. As I finish the final assembly of the drawers and prep for that B-roll, let me try to answer what's the right age to have kids. The truth is, in my opinion, there's no perfect answer. It's all about balance. Having kids when you're young means you get to play with them more, share more physical activities, and maybe even relate to their teenage years better. But, as I saw with my dad, age brings wisdom. And there's something I want to pass down to my kids too. I want to be the dad who not only can keep up with them, but also guide them in the lessons I've learned. Maybe the best time to have kids is when you feel ready, when you've taken the time to grow, mature, and get your life in place where you can be both energetic and wise. Just like woodworking, it's about getting the right materials, the right mindset, and the right timing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.